Hello everyone, it's Theme Park Avenue, I'm Eric. Not long ago, I made a video predicting that Cedar Point's next ride would be a family coaster, because the park kind of seems to be moving toward a all-ages resort type thing. Then I found out, a month after making that video, after predicting a Vekoma family boomerang, Theme Park Predictions had done the same thing. Interesting. Well, not for a new prediction, now I'm gonna say, Cedar Point could be making a dark ride very soon. Before I get into my ideas, remember this is just prediction and also just kind of some ideas that I think would be good for a dark ride. Some of them are very, very unlikely, but kind of to give a little background on why I'm thinking there's a dark ride, Cedar Point and Cedar Fair as a whole have clearly been moving to be more like a theme park. More theming in areas, more rides that cater toward large audiences, including families. It's not just amusement and mainly for coaster enthusiasts anymore. Some examples of this are the theming of Tumbili and the Jungle Expedition area at King's Dominion, the whole Area 72 at Kings Island with Orion, and even at Cedar Point, Snake River Expedition. That's a calm, relaxing boat ride with theming. So even though the theming is not the mind-blowing immersion you get at something like Islands of Adventure in Florida, it is good, and definitely can appeal to that theme park crowd more. So I think it's possible Cedar Point will be looking at some dark rides in the future. So let's begin with the most important aspect: who would make it? For me, there are two options: Sally or Triotech. Maybe it's Triotech, but I'm going to say Triotech for this video, but let me kind of talk about each manufacturer. Sally, they've made a lot of dark rides that tend to include a lot of practical effects, but also do sometimes have screens. Some examples I've experienced are Lost Kingdom Adventure at Legoland, Florida, which is almost entirely practical. Really fun ride. I enjoy it even though it's clearly not the highest budget. It's a great shooting ride, and I noticed that Sally does specialize in shooting rides. They also have made Justice League Battle for Metropolis, which is actually pretty fun, even though most of the shooting elements are screen-based. And they've done some others, but those are pretty much the only major ones I've done from them that are more modern. I did the classic Boo Blasters rides before, but I think Cedar Point would be looking at something more like Justice League or Lost Kingdom Adventure, or a mix of two in terms of screen and practical. Now Triotech, they are screen-based. That's just how it is. They made Wonder Mountain's Guardian in Canada's Wonderland, Voyage to the Iron Reef, now Knott's Berry Tales Return to the Fair at Knott's Berry Farm, and also some where you shoot with your hands using motion sensors, such as the very fun and well-received Ninjago the Ride at Legoland. They also did the not-so-well-received Web Slingers of Spider-Man Adventure, but let's not talk about that here. So, the first thing I gotta say, between the two, I would absolutely prefer to see Sally Dark Rides take this project. I think an almost all-screen dark ride is just not the way to go for Cedar Point. Maybe it is cheaper, it definitely could be, but I feel for the best possible ride, you need to have some practical effects, even if it's just sets, and not a whole lot of things like animatronics. Triotech, I think, though, is probably the more likely of the two, because even though there hasn't been a Triotech dark ride coming to a Cedar Fair park in a little while, there was a time when they were definitely doing that with Wonder Mountain's Guardian and Voyage to the Iron Reef. So I think Triotech is more likely. I'd prefer Sally, but let's move to a more fun part. What would the ride be? So I have two ideas, and they're basically centered around where in the park they would be put. I'm going to start with the more likely one, and that is in the Wicked Twister plot of land. Many have predicted that this is where Cedar Point's next big thing will go. People have talked, of course, about Gerstlauers and wooden coasters and all of that. But I think with the area not being huge, over by where that old stadium is, where it's now just event space, the Wicked Twister plot of land, Kitty Kingdom, Max Air, and maybe even moving the giant wheel, I think a dark ride could definitely go there. Here, I think a Triotech would work fine. In terms of a theme, I'm thinking because it's right along the lake, perhaps it could be themed to some strange, frightening underwater creatures that are trying to get into Cedar Point and threaten everything or something like that. It could be a big sea monster story. I think that could be a cool one. That would definitely be similar to Iron Reef at Knott's Berry Farm, which has since been rethemed. I think they could do it a little better, and if they have some practical effects here and there, like maybe one large sea monster statue near the end, that could be really awesome. Now, I will say, something very important about this is the fact that they would have to make a large building for the dark ride. Being right along the beach, this could be considered an eyesore. I think there are ways to deal with this, though. I think it's possible that maybe they could theme the outside of the building. I know that would take quite a bit of funds to just cover up a building, but I think it's important that the lakefront and the beach look really nice. So if they were to put stuff on the outside, they could maybe theme it to a large boat or just paint it some really nice ocean-based colors. There's a lot of ways they could go about it. But I'm thinking that ride could be similar to Voyage to the Iron Reef. I would definitely think it's best to do a standard shooting ride and not use the motion sensor shooting. So this idea is the more likely, I think. In terms of the theme, I think it probably would be themed to that kind of monster thing. I should probably mention the Battle for Cedar Point theme I'm sure some have thought of. I love that idea, but there's no way that's happening as a dark ride, I feel like. For a name for this one, perhaps something like Lake Erie Legends or Curse of the Lake Monster or something like that. Not the most incredible name ever, but one that works for what the ride is. However, there's another dark ride idea I have that I think would be way more awesome. And I know it's kind of a very unlikely situation, but maybe they put it on the Forbidden Frontier Island. Obviously, they do have that whole Forbidden Frontier walkthrough there right now. I don't know a ton about that, but I think the island could more than fit a dark ride building. I imagine it'd be really cool to walk onto the island and then into the building, maybe some outdoor queue parts. And the fact that Frontier Town is by far the nicest looking and best themed area of Cedar Point tells me this is probably a good idea. You have some theming. On Steel Vengeance, you have a whole story, even though kind of weird. Maverick is probably the best themed roller coaster in the park. And then Snake River Expedition is really near Frontier Town, and it's great. So this dark ride definitely a shooting one, and for this one I think it's really important they did Sally dark rides, because you really have to have practical sets for something like this. My idea is, given that the Forbidden Frontier is where this is, they can make a story about the ghost of an outlaw coming back, and a bunch of bandits that are also ghosts with him, trying to kind of take over Frontier Town. You would have your pistols, you would be shooting out with them. I think if they did a pre-show that explained the story, it could be a really fun one. The story could be engaging enough, and with some practical sets like maybe some cowboy animatronics here and there, some rock work around the building to kind of mask it. I think that's definitely the best way to go about theming the outside of the building for this one, because the rock work at Maverick looks really nice, so it'd be good to kind of continue that theme. So overall, that's the idea I'd prefer, but I think it's unlikely they get rid of Forbidden Frontier really soon, but I think that would be a really awesome dark ride. For a name, they could just call it Forbidden Frontier, or maybe they could go a different route, call it something like Sheriff Showdown or Sheriff Shootout, kind of an Old West gunslinging theme. But those are my two ideas for dark rides. I think the more likely is definitely the Wicked Twister area one, even if it ends up being themed as something completely different, because there really isn't a major theme in that area of the park right now. But I think the ocean theme could be pretty good with the sea monsters. Obviously, it would be more lake theme, but the idea of water creatures being evil, I think that's one that could work for that area. I would prefer to see that Frontier Town one happen, but I think it's more likely we would see a Triotech dark ride over a Wicked Twister. those are my ideas for Cedar Point dark rides. I think it's definitely possible we can see those soon. Thank you for watching, and comment your ideas on this and any thoughts on it down below. Subscribe to the channel for more coaster content. I'll see you next time.